Good afternoon. Whoever was here is taller than me. So my name is Catherine. I am the associate pastor at Hitchcock Presbyterian Church, and I am the grandchild of Stephen Pater, who in the early 1900s, he and his parents left Poland, seeking opportunity in the logging camps of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they settled on the ceded land of the Anishinaabe people. I'm the great-grandchild of William Meidenbauer, whose parents left Germany in the mid-1800s, seeking religious freedom. They settled on the ceded Chippewa land and Potawatomi and Ottawa land in southeastern Wisconsin. And I'm the third great-grandchild of Catherine McKenna, all of whose children fought in the Civil War for the Northern Territories, who settled in Erin, Wisconsin just 3 years after that land was ceded also by the Potawatomi and the Ottawa and the Chippewa people. I say these things because as a white person in America, I am the child of immigrants. I am the child of people who sought asylum in their own way and in their own time, and who are refugees in their own way and in their own time. So as Americans and as Christians, I believe that this touches all of us in some way, and it is our duty to know our own history and our own connection to it. So, thank you. So those of us who have been working with the asylum seekers who have been arriving from New York City are forming this partnership in order to better serve those refugees, to work together as Presbyterians and other people of faith in this area. And as part of this presentation, I'm just going to give you all a little bit of background on who these folks are, why they have come here at this particular time. We are going to talk about some of the stories that we have heard from the people who have come here. It was not possible to bring someone here today, though we tried to make that happen. The other thing we're going to do is talk about what the partnership churches and others have already been doing in our areas for these folks, and then our last thing will be an ask of how you can get involved. So that is our program for the next 10 minutes. So first, a clarification of terms. In the United States, a refugee is a migrant whose humanitarian status was defined before they left their home country and who was given that status before they left their home country and came here. An asylum seeker is someone who enters at a port of entry and requests asylum status at that port of entry. There is no major way to distinguish between whose cases are more difficult, more deserving, or more legally relevant behind who has arrived in what particular way. It just has to do with how our own immigration system classifies certain people. So as Christians in particular, it's important to realize that someone's quote-unquote deservedness or not for one of these designations has nothing to do with what they're coming from, but rather the particular legal system our country has set up, okay? So as of September 10th of this year, between spring of 2022 and now, 113,000 migrants and asylum seekers have arrived in New York City. So we're just talking about our area, we're not talking about the United States. This is not some abstract thing, this is very close to home. Many arrivals in New York have been Venezuelans. Since February, as of February rather, more than 7 million refugees and migrants had left Venezuela. As a matter of perspective, that is a country with 29 million residents, okay, citizens. So that is a significant percentage of people living in that country. That is a combination of authoritarian governance being part of the issue, of sanctions imposed by us and by other countries as a result of that governance. It does not help that all of Latin America has long been exploited, colonized, and neo-colonized by the United States, by Britain, by France even in a couple countries, by Portugal, and of course also by Spain. And so it is important to recognize that this is part of a 400-year-long emergency, and we are now reaping what we and our ancestors have sown. According to the United States High Commissioner for Refugees, this is the second largest external displacement crisis in the world. So what we are facing here in the United States as a result of what is going on in Venezuela and elsewhere is a major global emergency and not just a local one. So if it feels big, it's because it is big. A lot of recent refugees and migrants have also been arriving from countries in Africa. Some of us might be able to speak to that as part of this presentation as well. I know that's been true for some of the folks in White Plains. Many migrants have said that they are pursuing asylum, but it can take 3 to 4 years before a decision is made in asylum cases under current law. And under current law, if you apply for asylum in the United States, you are qualified after 6 months to receive a work permit. So under current designations, most of these folks are not qualified for a work permit until 6 months after they arrive. And a few of those have been designated eligible for humanitarian parole. That's about 24,000 people. But that's a small percentage of the people who have arrived, and you have to have come within a certain period of time, and not everyone is qualified for that. So we're looking at a large group of people who have every reason to flee, who have no quick legal pathway for even being able to work, much less stay. So that's the crisis that we're facing. They need food, they need clothing, they need housing, which is a major crisis that we will talk about, and they need an immigration system in this country that recognizes that many of our ancestors came here with no papers, no documents, no requirements, no exam, no nothing. And that might not be the way we want to do it today, but we need to find ways for people who want to be safe from whatever they are fleeing to be safe in this country. And as Christians who worship a refugee, it is absolutely our duty to figure out how to help these people now that they are here. Now that we are helping them, we get to hear a lot of their stories. So I'm just going to tell you one. I met a young mother. She is younger than me, so, you can guess how young I am based on my baby face and, take a guess. She's got to be in her early to mid-20s. Young, lovely person, quiet, about my height. And she has a 3-year-old daughter, lovely child, delightful, bosses all the other kids in the hotel around. You can tell she's a leader already. And she came from Venezuela earlier this year. She said she started out in April and arrived here April, May, June, July, and arrived here in early July in the United States. And I said, well, how did you get here? And she said, I walked. And I said, the whole way? She said, I was so desperate to leave and so afraid that if I took a bus that someone would stop me, that I walked every step for 3 months carrying my daughter on my back from Venezuela. That includes, if you have read articles about this, the passage through the Darien Gap, which is a very, very dangerous, very muddy, very rainy part of rainforest where people get seriously injured or worse just trying to cross. That includes walking through parts of Mexico that are very dangerous because they are controlled by criminal gangs and other elements that make it very unsafe for people to travel, women and children especially. Women, you know exactly what I'm saying. And she arrived at the southern border, very, very grateful in late June or early July, grateful just to have made it, and then feels like she was duped into being put on a bus and sent to New York by the governor of Texas. So take that for what it's worth. And what we do is political, even if what we're doing is just loving people, right? Because that was true for Jesus too. So that's just one story, and I'm going to turn it over to Robin, who can tell you some more.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm Robin Larkins. I'm the administrator of South Church and the proud granddaughter of Albert Roberto, who was an Italian immigrant in 1903. We are one body in Christ, and we do not stand alone. And that is what we are called to now. That's what we were called to on Tuesday, June 20th, on a sunny, somewhat humid, early summer day in the late afternoon when a family came to the door at South Church. Alejandro asked for help with his family, he, his wife, his 4-year-old, and his 8-year-old child. We worked together on conversation. They were also from Venezuela. In subsequent interactions, as Marjorie was giving them a ride back to the motel, we learned that Alejandro's family walked, like Catherine's friend's family, from Venezuela to the Texas border, and then made their way on the bus from Texas to New York to Ardsley. And when they arrived in Ardsley, they had no idea where they were, yet they found us. And neither did the company who transported them to Ardsley. They had no idea where Ardsley was either. So when we think about the 2,733 miles from Venezuela to the Texas border, we look at that as 6,832,500 steps. And for those of us who count our 10,000 steps a day, you can do the math on that one. So they asked for food, clothing, and work. Food, clothing, and work. The next day, more than 20 additional families arrive at our food pantry asking for food, clothing, and work. The story repeats itself over and over again. Last Thursday, another family arrives with a 4-year-old that basically has a t-shirt and a diaper. That's it. So even after 2 months of feeling like we're trying to figure this out, every day presents a new challenge. So we're many parts. We are one body. And we're all looking for the way, the truth, the life. And we're called to do this together. I was reading a couple of articles on different things, and I found a term that I really like, because I think what this partnership is a term that's called compassionomics, like economics, compassionomics. And we always hear, always follow the money. And with this type of crisis, as Catherine alluded to, we're following the money because we're dealing with, in Ardsley and in some of the other locations in this area, a for-profit company that was awarded a no-bid $482 million contract to serve these folks. And when they arrived in Ardsley, the mayor did not know they were coming. The people who transported them had no idea where Ardsley was and that it was not connected to the New York City subway system. And here we go from there. So the community and the organizations in the community have been called to help. And we are many parts in one body, but sometimes we reject the parts of our bodies because we hear from other people who have moved into the motel that in other locations, not too far from here, the buses are met with very angry people who break the mirrors off the buses, who tell them to go home or to go back from where they came from. And so we have this small geographic area that has this very different response to what we are called to do and be. So in Westchester County, I just want to talk about our responses so far as a presbytery. Catherine named the churches that have submitted letters in terms of this partnership. Westchester County is a community that did offer to allow the asylum seekers to be in the county. So there's 3 locations in Ardsley, Yonkers, and White Plains, housing approximately 400 migrants. In Orange County, in Newburgh, there's approximately 400 migrants being housed. In Rockland County, they're closed to housing asylum seekers, but we heard on the news this morning of houses that are being rented to 30 people at a time as part of this transport of people and not knowing what to do with them. We've had our responses from our various community members and churches. Just want to shout out to South Church in terms of the Dobbs Ferry Food Pantry that immediately added over 70 people to the numbers that we provide food to on a weekly basis, and also having to provide food to people who live in a motel that have a microwave and a small refrigerator. And one of the things that has been done is grills have been donated, and an outdoor kitchen area has been formed, and there's a lot of other things that have been done so that our new neighbors can figure out ways in which they can do things for themselves, because in addition to food, clothing, and work, I think many of the people that we have interacted with want to make decisions for themselves and choices for themselves. South Church also assists as part of a leadership team of community responders along with the Mayor of Ardsley, St. Barnabas Church, Woodlands Community Temple, and a community coalition that has been formed of over 20 partners, government offices, individual providers, and the for-profit provider that has people that working on the ground that are extremely compassionate and do understand the dynamics, even though they're working for a company that answers to their shareholders first. This ecumenical community government partnership is something that prevents us from reinventing the wheel and allows us to channel our resources in a way that's beneficial to the residents and what their needs are. Hitchcock Presbyterian has also stepped in with one of the other locations, the White Plains. They've hosted barbecues, meals, have opened their thrift store, shopping, visit, and have held worship with the community. and are also going to host an adult education series in October that I'm hoping that a lot of folks in the Presbytery and from our communities will participate in over Zoom. Especially because we have a lot of action and advocacy that needs to be a part of this effort. Because as you heard, you have people that are entering into our communities that technically cannot work for at least 6 months after they arrive. And so after we get them food and clothing, that desire to work and to earn some money so that they can start making decisions for themselves is severely impeded by the structures that are in place now. I also want to shout out to Union Presbyterian, who's opened up clothing and coat drives and ESL lessons. Central Presbyterian Church, monthly clothing and household item giveaways. They're starting a new food pantry, referrals for Spanish-speaking migrants in their community. Dutchess County has a Red Roof Inn that has residents there, and there's partnering with, Freedom Plains is partnering with the World Migrant Ministries for ESL and other social matters. This is a day-to-day response that we've been called to be a part of. We've been called to be part of that many parts and one body. We are a work in progress. We literally, I think, got approved on August 15th. We are devising how we can best be in partnership with others, as well as initiate things that systemically can help benefit our new neighbors that are among us. So our final effort is to come to you and ask, what can we do together, and hopefully continue to address some of the different needs that are there. Like right now, as the weather gets cooler and each leaf changes color, we have motels filled with people that maybe have never experienced a New York winter, and so that is going to be something that's very first and foremost that's happening, as well as trying to help people learn English and prepare for whatever work that they can obtain as they continue to be with us. This is not a short-term sprint. This is a long-term marathon that we're in, for all the reasons that Catherine expounded upon. And we look forward to creating an action plan where we're working in concert with the Presbytery and with other organizations that really get the idea of being part of that one body, and creating a way for others to thrive and grow with us. So, Catherine?
I know we're over time, so I'm going to be really quick. All right, who do you worship?
Jesus.
That took too long. Who do we worship?
Jesus.
And Jesus was a refugee, yes?
Yes.
So do you care?
Yes.
Okay, there's a board over there on that table. It's got a QR code. It will send you to a thing created by the PCOSA that has some action items. Join the partnership. Look into that. Take one of these home. Get connected with these efforts to house them, feed them, clothe them, and get involved with our efforts for justice so we can dismantle the system that created this problem in the first place. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.